Oh, that's Auntie
Talk to me.
Trey. I just want to do auntie shit with my friends. Hey YouTube, it's Auntie Trey and I'm back with another video, another story time about my crazy life. I've been like super busy. So that's why while I tell this story, I am going to be folding clothes. Try not to get too distracted, but I really need to fold these clothes, okay? So this was a story time about the time I witnessed an unaliving when I lived in Fayetteville. So this happened like well over 10 years ago when my son and I had moved into our place, and it was on a Wednesday night. I'll never forget, it was a Wednesday night in November. It was cold outside, and the next day my son and I were driving to Buffalo. We had a family event to attend. So the next day we were going to go to Buffalo. I was in my son's room. His room was at the front of the house. He was in the bed asleep. I was sitting on the foot of the bed watching the TV because at the time we only had one TV. So we were going to go to Buffalo, go to my storage in Buffalo and grab like one of the other TVs and some other stuff and bring it back to North Carolina in addition to attending a family event. Okay, so it wasn't too late. It was like maybe 11, a little bit after, because I had just got finished watching Revenge. I remember that show Revenge that used to come on. So I just got finished watching that, and I was about to go to my room and go to bed, and I heard cow, 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 cow. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm from the hood, so I know what that is. That wasn't no firecracker, it was gunshots. So what I did was, and it all, like I'm telling it, step by step, but it all happened at once. I called my son's name. He rolled on the floor. He crawled into the living room. I got down. Like somebody shooting. And it's like, I don't know, my son heard me in his sleep and he knew what to do. Or I don't know if he heard the gunshots or whatever and knew what to do. So I'm like, oh my God, oh my God. So gradually, the lights in the apartment complex I lived in, people started turning on the lights over their doors. And the parking lot was always very dark, but you had a light over your door. You had just enough light to come in so you could see to put your key in the door and come in the house. And so, I'm like, oh my God. So gradually, like I said, people started turning on the lights over their doors, going around the complex. And I heard somebody outside screaming. I'm like, oh my God, somebody is hit. And I heard somebody screaming like bloody. Well, I'm not going to say that, but somebody was like really screaming, like terrified screaming. And I'm like, oh my God, somebody hit. So I start going outside. My son was like, Ma, don't go out there. I'm like, it's all right. It's all right. So I start walking over, and there's a girl like on her knees. She got on panties and bra, and she's on her knees over this person, and she's screaming, help him, please, somebody help him. And it's this guy laying on the ground, and he's laying on the ground like this. And I'm like, oh my God. So I run back to my apartment. I grab my phone and I call 911, and I'm like, somebody's been shot, and I give them the address, and they're like, oh yeah, we've had several calls, police, ambulance are en route. So I'm like, oh my God. I was like, well, what should I do? I have a you could call it a background in medical, what I do, but some people wouldn't anyway. So I'm like, well, what should I do? And they were like, well, put pressure on the wound. So I have my phone and I'm shining my phone down on him. And I'm like, I don't see any wounds like on his back. And the girl is still screaming, help, somebody help him. And so then the 911 operator says, well, roll him over on his back. And I'm like, and I don't know, I can't remember what made me say this to her, but I was like, I think he's been shot in the head. And she like, okay, don't roll him over, cover him up because he's going to be in shock from the blood loss. So I'm yelling to my son, bring me a blanket. So my son runs me out a blanket. I cover the boy up, and the girl is still out there in her bra and panties. And now it's starting to rain, and it's that fine misty rain when it's real cold outside. It was nasty out that night. So, like I said, homegirl's still out there in her bra and panties. Other neighbors are outside, and they're all on their phones, and with 911 and whomever else. And so I tell my son, bring me your robe so I can put it over her. My son brings me her robe. I put it over the girl. She like, no. She jump up. She throw the robe on her. Help him. I don't care about me. Help him. Please, please, please go check on my baby. And so, I went into her apartment. I checked on her baby. Her baby was still sleeping, and it was like a toddler. Maybe it wasn't like a baby, but it was a toddler. And checked on her baby. By the time I got back outside, the police had arrived. The ambulance still hadn't gotten there. The police were there. And so the police were like telling everybody, go back. This is a crime scene. Go back into your apartment. You need to go back into your apartment. I'm like, okay, but I'm on the phone. I'm telling the police what 911 told me. They were like, okay, ma'am, thank you, ma'am. Okay, go back. They like brushing me off. Okay, go back in your apartment. Go back in your apartment. And the officer like shined his light on the guy on the ground, and you could just see like a halo of blood going around his head. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that sight. But after that, I'm back in the house with my son, and it's just like, now what? Okay, I need to lay down. We got to take this drive to New York tomorrow. But how can I lay down after something like this? Oh, fat. I'm like, how can I lay down after something like this happened? Like, it's devastating. So, after I finally went to bed, I don't know how long, but somebody came and knocked on my door, and I go, and it's a uniformed officer, and he's asking me how many shots. I told him it was 5. He asked me, did I see the car? I told him, yes, I seen the car. I said it was a white Charger with black rims. He said, well, did you see which way it go? I said, yes, it either went. I said, I believe it went toward the hospital, because when I looked out my back window, it wasn't going towards the car didn't turn. It was only 2 ways the car could go, either towards the hospital or downtown. And the car didn't go past my window to go downtown. So it had to go towards the hospital. He's like, okay, ma'am, thank you. Here's my card if you hear anything else. CSI is still out there gathering information. The boy's body is still out there. I'm like, wow, he didn't make it. So I don't know how I try to go back to bed. Now, before all this happened, I'm calling my sister. I'm calling my son, my other son that's in New York. I'm calling my friend that lives in Fayetteville. I'm calling my cousin that lives in Charlotte. I'm calling everybody like, y'all, there is a crime scene out in front of my door. Can you believe this? Nobody's answering their phone. I'm just like, shit. So finally, I lay back down. After I don't know how much time passed, plainclothes detectives come to my door, and they ask me the same questions. Ma'am, how many shots did you hear? I heard 5 shots. I'll never forget that succession, that pattern. I'll never forget that. That's like embedded in my brain. I told them the 5 shots, and I told them, my theory. Who am I? My theory on why I feel like the car went towards the hospital instead of going downtown. And they said, thank you. They gave me a business card. If you hear anything else, and we may come back to talk to you. I'm like, well, I'm leaving tomorrow. My son and I are going to New York tomorrow. We're not going to be home. They're like, okay, well, fine. We'll talk. If we need anything else, we'll call you. We have your number, blah, blah, blah. And that was it. I kept looking out the window, and it was so cold out that night. It was really, for North Carolina, it was freezing. And I just kept saying, they need to get him up off the ground, talking about the young man that was unalived. I was like, it's cold outside. They need to get him off the ground. By the time I woke up, by the time the sun came up, they were starting to clean up. And everybody left. The CSI people left. The police were gone. They had put out a big spotlight, like a big spotlight, because the parking lot was so dark. They brought in a big spotlight, I guess, so they could, you know, you know, do what they do. Investigate the crime scene. And yeah, that was it. The guy who owned the apartments, he came over that day and put a light out, a big light out in the apartment complex. I don't know if that would have helped if he would have did it beforehand, before this boy met this fate. But yeah, that was the time I witnessed an unaliving in my apartment complex in Fayetteville, North Carolina. If you like this video, rate, comment, and subscribe. Share, tell your friends to tell a friend, because your girl is fighting for her life over here on these YouTube streets. That's it for now. I'm trying to be more consistent, but I'm going through right now, y'all. Yeah, I'm going through, so I'm gonna try, like I said, try to be more consistent. But that's it for now. Peace and blessings, y'all. Thank you for watching.